Yo, what's up everybody, it's Tuna. I just want to preface this video by saying that this build is extremely expensive. However, since I feel like everybody in this league is swimming in currency, I wanted to make a build for the people that have a lot of currency and might not know what to spend it on. So that is here what my build is, and that is the Blade Vortex Assassin. There's a few reasons as to why I went for Assassin. However, before we actually get deep into the explanation, all the nitty gritty, all the nerdy sort of like PoE stuff, I will just start the video off with a showcase and you guys can see how it functions in high wisp juice maps. With Magic Find, of course, because this is Magic Find League. So we are going to be putting on our Magic Find boots here. We're going to be putting our Spectres into that. And we are going to be using the Dark Marionettes as our Spectres. So let me just deactivate that and spawn the two. So I'll talk a little bit about this mechanic a little later, but for the time being, let's get into the showcase. All right, so I managed to fish up a map here, with 6 modifiers all slammed onto there with 60% Delirious, and we got about 5,200 juice, so that's pretty good. And we're running these sextants here with strongboxes and raged as well as abysses and beyond. So the build is actually performing extremely well in juiced scenarios because we are actually, trying to our best to juice up our explosions as much as possible. So it will make these maps feel like, like normal maps basically, even though they have like full wisp, full everything. Your explode is going to be dealing a ton of damage and you're going to be scaling very, very efficiently with headhunter buffs, with hatred, with aura effect, with all of those kinds of things. So what you end up getting is, you just pop strongboxes, everything on the screen dies. I'm just going to hide the loot for now unless we get a really cool tink or something like that. But just for the purpose of this video, to show you guys what it looks like to clear maps, and that is, with a lot of MF. So we have MF Amulet, we have MF Rings, we have MF Boots of course, but I decided to keep the gloves since the gloves would allow us to get all our conversion done, much more easily than if we were to not do that. But yeah, it basically just feels really good because on top of the fact that we have, a lot of damage, a lot of clear with our explode chest, we also do have decent amount of mitigation in that we are generating endurance charges, and those endurance charges can be expended by Mortal Call. But on top of that, we also have 94% chance to evade attacks. Meaning that, a lot of the dangerous things, like for example from abysses and stuff like that, they're not spells, they're attacks. So you're going to be dying to those if you don't have high evasion. And since blue altars as well, they completely just remove your physical damage mitigation depending on what altar modifier you pick. There are in some cases, 80% reduction of physical damage mitigation. So it basically almost makes it redundant to build for armor in general. However, evasion does actually remain a lot more effective. So we're just going to let this spire shoot out its projectiles, as you guys know, and then we go in and we just blow everything up in one go. So that's kind of what it looks like. You have to sort of be careful with the abyssal spires, as you can actually just one-shot them if you're not. But what I usually do is I just walk away from the abyssal spires, and we got a tink, very nice. And then I just dash back in with my blink, and everything blows up in one go. So that's kind of what it looks like. The build is absolute dopamine. It's so much fun to play. But as I said, it is expensive, so it's something that you might want to work up to if you're playing like Chieftain or something like that. Save up a couple mirrors for this one. I'm telling you now, it is worth it. It is very, very worth it. It is very fun to play. It is not as tanky as the Chieftain, of course, but as you can see, it clears these maps like butter. It has no problem cutting through any of these mobs, even when you have like 6 modifiers and all that kind of stuff. 60% delirium. It can get a bit stinky when you got like 4 defense modifiers. Like if you got more life, reduced damage from crits and suppressed, then yeah, things get a little bit stinky. But there we go. We got a reliquary key and another divine orb, and we'll just continue clearing. And of course, Headhunter does so much for this build since we are base physical damage, and Headhunter gives you a ton of extra fizz. Fizz is extra. We got another divine, as you can see, it's a pretty good map overall. So yeah, it gives us a ton of physical damage as extra, as well as a little bit of base critical strike chance, and it helps us scale our damage to some very cool proportions, because as well, we are, you know, putting a lot of attention on our explode chest, and our explode chest deals, you know, base percent HP of the monsters as physical damage. And since we are converting that physical damage and we're doing additional ways to scale that damage as well, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you know, that is how we're getting these insane explosions and blowing everything up in one go, and that is how we get this very satisfying clear. But that is on top of course, everything else. So I'm just gonna loot this map, and I'll catch you guys back in the hideout with a thorough explanation of the itemization and all of that good stuff. Alright, so now that we got the showcase out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the itemization. And we gotta start it off with Pain Bane, my synthesized thickened bow, which I will have a video coming out explaining exactly how I crafted this, but this is a bow that I crafted that cost me a few mirrors to make and has now had over 150 mirror services. So you will see a lot of this bow out there. Of course, that is free to mirror if you want it, of course. So no fee. And this bow is where we'll be housing our Blade Vortex gem, because the bow is going to be giving us so many additional gem levels. And that is really the only way to scale gem levels with Blade Vortex, is to put it in your bow. And also in general, having a bow means that you don't have to have two scepters, so you don't have to mirror 2 weapons for it. And it's, you know, you get a ton of additional stats, like for example, double damage, explode, and multi. But the explode is exactly what we want, right? We want to have as much percent chance to explode as possible, and this is additive with other explode chances. So here you can see that I have 35 and here I have 25. So that will sum up together to, you know, essentially make it so that it's much more likely for monsters to explode. And yeah, additionally, everything that I sort of built for this character is going to be generic increases as much as possible, generic critical strike multiplier and generic critical strike chance. Because as much as this build is a Blade Vortex build, in reality under the hood what it is a Fizz Explode build. That's what lets you clear maps like we do. That's what lets the explosions sort of chain out from your character and explode the screen, rather than it just being sort of like, you know, our blades hitting monsters and killing them one by one. Which is what makes Blade Vortex so good, is the explode and the fact that you can scale both the explode as well as your spell in the same way, right? So yeah, we want to get as much explode chance as possible and as much damage as possible on our weapon, of course. And yeah, we will be scaling our character through being an assassin. So it's important to me that we scale explode. And we do that with assassin, because assassin gives you a lot of generic critical strike multiplier. As you can see here, with, we got 5 per power charge. It gives you base critical strike chance while at maximum power charges. And on top of that, you know, it gives you additional power charges here. And most importantly, it gives you ambush and assassinate. This node is really, really insane, because we will never be able to get to the point where our explode chest is crit capped. However, since the way that it works is that, like, we're hitting one monster, that monster explodes, and all of the monsters behind it haven't been hit by our blades, they are going to be full HP, right? So because of that, they are taking 100% more critical strike, you know, we deal 100% more critical strike chance to those enemies that are on full life, meaning our explode chest is pretty much crit capped, as long as the monsters are full HP, right? That is the condition there, of course. And that is as good as we're going to get it for explode, but that is why my explosions are dealing so much damage and are able to clear, you know, even full wisped 60% deli maps, and you can even go up to 100% deli if you wanted to, but obviously that's not ideal. But yeah, ambush and assassinate is really insane in this situation. Of course, in combination with this. So we're getting a ton of critical strike chance here. We're getting a ton of additional critical strike chance here, as well as some more damage. And then we got Mistwalker, which is really nice. Well, if you guys know, this lead mechanic adds, you know, if you get Blue Wisp, it adds a ton of critical strike multiplier to the monsters, and this basically makes you immune to critical strikes. So this actually is a very valuable layer of defense this league, something that you shouldn't take for granted. All right, so for the rest of the gear, I have, you know, basic tempo gloves with increased damage against chilled enemies, and most enemies are going to be chilled when we hit them, of course, because we are pure cold damage. So yeah, we're going to be chilling enemies on hit unless they have chance to avoid, and these gloves are pretty standard, although very expensive, right? So we have 35% chance to convert, 35% of physical damage converted to cold damage. And then we can actually additionally craft another 25% on these to get enough conversion to get to 100% when combined with the cold mastery. Because we can get 60% on the gloves, 35 plus 25, and then 40% here. But what I did is I actually went for a synthesized quiver with 25% conversion implicit. And don't look at this quiver, it's not done, and it is not by no means best in slot, as all that's giving me is like an additional 28% increased damage during flask effect. So that's not good at all, right? So going for like a synthesized quiver is not ideal. You can actually awaken orb quivers together to have like 30% physical damage as extra, as well as, potential other modifiers. However, I wanted to control and have chaos resistance as well as global multi on this. So I went for a synthesized quiver, and I will eventually finish this at some point. But yeah, I'm not at that stage yet. The next piece is another insane piece that I crafted just like I crafted the bow. I re-rolled from a +1 power charge implicit helmet. And yeah, I kept re-rolling it until I got rarity and cost reservation multiplier. And additionally, I got like, chaos resistance, mana reservation efficiency, and that kind of stuff on this helmet. However, in the PoE version that I will show you guys later, you do not use this helmet. It's stupid expensive, and it's not something I expect people to mirror at all. However, the downside of not using the helmet is that you do actually not want to use gold worms if you don't have the helmet, as you kind of are creating holes in the build that you don't like, that this helmet patches, right? And this helmet sort of makes up a little bit of damage because it allows me to reserve Herald of Purity in addition to like everything else. So yeah, for the ring, we're going for Eventors with as much resistance as possible. These are crazy expensive, and so that's why we use Calandra's Touch to mirror it. It's going to be enabling us to get a ton of extra resistances that way. For our amulet, I go for a Simplex. Simplex is just stupid insane. It gives you 20% quantity, it gives you a ton of critical strike multiplier. And then to get the last prefix is, of course, you could just craft it. But I wanted to go the extra mile, so I go suffixes cannot be changed, veiled chaos orb, and then I try to unveil. And if it's not something I wanted, what you do there is you Hinakore's lock and you try to annul off the prefix in hopes of doing the same thing over and over again until you can get your AOE and area damage. The belt, of course, is Headhunter. You kind of don't want to be running this with a Mage Blood. Headhunter is just stupid good for these kinds of maps. Of course, like you can run a Mage Blood if you were to not do wisp juiced maps or stuff like that. But yeah, I went for a Headhunter. It's just a no-brainer. And then for the boots, you go for gold worms, or if you actually wanted to, go for the alternative way without the helmet, what you would do is you would use Heat Shiver with +1 power charge, and then the boots would be Ralakesh's Impatience, which I stashed somewhere, and there they are, Ralakesh's Impatience. And you want to have these corrupted. They must be corrupted with 8% chance to suppress spell damage, as this is going to help you get spell suppress cap. And the minimum you want to go on here is 7%, I believe, because then you'll get to 100% chance to suppress spell damage, and that is pretty much mandatory. It's really important to have suppress cap. So yeah, you're getting the suppress. You need to have at least 1 T1 roll, and that is going to be on the gloves because you don't have much other leeway, and then the rest you're going to be getting from your tree. For your chest, you want to have Explode, and you kind of want to have increased effect of non-cursed auras. Crafting these chests is impossible. It's such a pain. There's no way to really craft this deterministically. The best thing you can do is you can elevate Explode, then imprint your chest, and Awakener Orb until you hit good modifiers. This is actually the next project that I'm going to be working on. It's something that I want to sort of make perfect. So I'll eventually work on getting something like this done that is near perfect, aka if people want to mirror it, they can. But for the time being, I am sticking with this one. Because it's good enough. And for our flasks, you want to have Taste of Hate. It's such a strong flask. It's going to give you Fizz's extra as well as Fizz taken as. A little bit of Fizz mitigation. Progenesis, it's just broken. Everybody knows it. 25% damage reduction, essentially. And then we got a Diamond Flask, a Quicksilver with Evasion, and as well as a Jade Flask. Now, our passive skill tree sprawls out a little bit. That's because we want to be getting power charges. Power charges are important for this build because it's the way that we're going to be scaling our Explode chest damage. and as well as our area of effect. And that is thanks to, of course, the charms. So we'll take a look at the charms real quick, and the charms look something like this. I have one charm here that has additional spell chance, additional critical strike chance while the maximum power charges. That is 1%. That is a lot of critical strike chance, and 7% suppress. But this is not necessary in the version where you're using Ralakesh. Only if you have this helmet. And for the remainder, I use 4% area of effect per power charge, and I'll also use 4% here. I like to get global chance to blind because that gives me additional, chance to evade attacks. And then cannot take reflected elemental damage, meaning I can run any map modifier I want outside of no regen and minus max. Those are the modifiers that I always avoid because they're just a pain, and yeah, I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, the charms will just be scaling both AoE, so we'll just get a ton of AoE from both of these, and then we're going to be getting additional base crit from that one. But that is not the only place where we get AoE. We get a ton of AoE from our clusters, and that is going to be, assert dominance with vast power. I get 2 vast powers, and that is going to be basically getting to the cap, and that is going to be the other one here. Yeah, that's going to be getting to the cap of 50% with 2 of them. So yeah, 2 vast powers, and the remainder are going to be towering threat and assert dominance. You can't beat these. Honestly, AoE is everything. You want to be getting as much AoE as possible. I know you could be getting so much more damage if you just didn't go for AoE, but the reason why this build pops the way that it does is because we're scaling AoE and explode chest and all that kind of stuff. So don't get baited by POB damage numbers. Too many people do that, and too many people run, in my opinion, builds that are just not that good. But yeah, so we got a ton of AoE, and that means that our explode chest is scaling to 4.5 meter radius. And our BV is scaling to, I believe, 3.9. Let's look in POB real quick. All right, now we're getting to the really nerdy stuff. So you can see here in POB, when you go to the calcs, you can actually select on-kill explosions, and that's going to be our explode chest. And then we go down to the radius here, and you can see that is our explode chest AoE. It's massive. It's 4.5 meters. It's so good. I am so happy that we can actually scale explode chest that much. And I'm also really happy that this function exists in Path of Building. But when we go to Blade Vortex, we put that up to 10 blades. We can see that our AoE is 3.9 meters. That's what it looks like when we're fully ramped up on power charges. Gotta say, not bad at all. That is pretty good. But let's get back to the passive skill tree and explain a lot of the decisions that I made. So yeah, we're going for Disciple of the Forbidden because that gives us critical strike multiplier per power charge as well as chance per power charge. That scales both our BV as well as our explode chest. And of course, you're just going to be grabbing life there. It's just efficient. And 15% maximum life. If there are no life modifiers on your chest, this depends. Like if you have life modifiers on your chest, you don't want to have that. But this is actually kind of insane because it allows you to craft, percent physical damage taken as instead of life, and you can actually get more value than if you were to just crafted life. And yeah, that is really nice. We're gonna anoint overcharge, of course, on our amulet. That's to get additional use of power charges, and with that we have 8 power charges, so that's pretty cool. And then we path through Heart of Ice. It's really important because we need to grab 40% chance. I keep saying chance, but it's 40% physical damage converted to cold damage. We have fully converted damage with our gloves and with that mastery. And unfortunately, I couldn't figure out another way to do this, but you need to have a voices here. And the voices is because we are extremely starved on jewels. There's other ways to get ailment avoidance, but this is the most efficient way, right? The most efficient way was to get Storm Shroud with, of course, Corrupted Blood on there, which is quite expensive, but it's the most easy place to get Corrupted Blood. I didn't say the build was going to be cheap, boys, all right? And then chance to avoid being shocked, 50%. And I got phasing on one of them. This gives me 0 damage, basically. It's just going to be life, avoid being shocked, and phasing. And then this one here, which gives me a little bit of life, some crit multi, and avoid being shocked. So two of those together gives me a 100% chance to avoid shock. And then Storm Shroud makes me ailment immune. It sucks, but having 3 jewels for ailment immunity is very expensive. But there is no other way to realistically do this. And ailment avoidance is so important in this game that sacrificing that much damage, you just have to do it, unfortunately. So then going down the rest of the tree, we have, Reservation Mastery here, which gives us 10% increased effect of auras, which we have, a lot of auras. So that's a lot of damage. And then we scale and we walk down to here to Written in Blood. We need to grab this Elemental Mastery. It's really important that you path out to Snowforged, because Snowforged is not only a crazy node, it gives 5% penetration technically, but it also gives you hits have a 25% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance as inverted. So monsters that have like crazy resistance, if you get a map that has like, you know, I think it scales up to 60% with Wandering Path, those monsters are going to be resisting your damage. So treating their resistance as inverted 1/4 of the time, this is a huge damage increase. It's very good. Then you path down to here and you grab the power charge and you go out to another cluster. This second cluster, you go for a Fizz cluster. However, you can also go for an elemental cluster with Leech on it. Doriani's Lesson is the Leech notable that you can have. However, I didn't feel like I needed Leech, but yeah, this gives us a little bit of chance to deal double damage, which is super nice, as well as physical damage. So that's going to scale both our Explode chest and our BV. And then we have additionally 2 medium clusters, but we have the Forbidden Flesh and Flame, Polymath. You don't necessarily need Polymath, but the reason why I like Polymath is because it gives you crazy amount of life on kill. You don't actually need more life on kill. You have Blood Drinker, which gives you 2%. But yeah, getting more life on kill is nice. And the nice thing about Polymath is that it gives you more damage to your Explode chest as well. So to those of you who don't know what Polymath does, it gives you 3% more damage for each different type of mastery you have allocated. So for example, if you take 1 life mastery, it gives you 3% more damage. But if you take a second life mastery, it doesn't actually give you additional damage. So you're trying to get as much different masteries as possible. And you can see that here it's giving me a combined 18% additional damage. And that's going to be also 18% additional damage to our Explode chest. By additional, I mean more damage. Sorry, I used the wrong terminology there. But you can see that you can also get like Harness the Void, which is much cheaper. Or technically, another really good one is Born in the Shadows. It gives you a ton of mitigation. I would try to stay away from Explosive Expert, especially since we don't actually consistently shock things. But it is a lot of damage, right? 40% critical strike multiplier against burning enemies and 10% penetration is really good. It is really, really strong. Or Bomb Specialist that gives you 10% more damage as well is pretty good. So you have some options there. You don't necessarily have to go for Polymath, but Polymath is by far the best one because of the life on kill that you get, as well as, you know, the more damage. Alright, so next we trail over to our Militant Faith. The reason why I put my Militant Faith here is because it's generally much easier to get strength as well as dexterity from your Headhunter by using Attribute Catalyst as it is to get intelligence. Another place where you could put your Militant Faith would be to just stick it up here. Let me close that real quick. So yeah, you would have it up here and basically you would get Inner Conviction there. Alright, so the reason why you put it there is because you have Inner Conviction, and Inner Conviction gives you 3% more spell damage per power charge. So we have 8 power charges, that's a ton of spell damage. But also it means that you don't have to actually necessarily generate frenzy charges, because we have technically 3 base frenzy charges. But unless we have Badger the Brotherhood, which you can use with this build, in combination with Ralakesh and Patience, generating frenzy charges is generally kind of hard. But if you have Badger the Brotherhood, you just put Ralakesh in there and you can still use Inner Conviction and you still get use of your frenzy charges, which is really nice. So yeah, that's a nice swap. If you don't actually care about MF and stuff like that, you can swap out those and you can even get more crazy stuff like power charge rings. But yeah, we're getting a ton of more damage from this. But on top of that, we're also getting more damage from the jewel itself, as it gives you % increased area damage and % increased effect of non-curse auras. You can also get % increased elemental damage or % increased resistances too, if you like. If you look into PoB, this current jewel is actually giving me 10.6% more damage. That's a really good jewel that is also scaling some defenses because it gives me 1% of 8 chance. And yeah, it's just a good spot to use it because it has it gives me 135% devotion, not percent, 135 devotion, so that's really cool. And yeah, in general, it doesn't mess with our stat requirements, which is pretty nice. All right, now this node, I know a lot of people are going to ask me, why do you have this node? And I have this node because it gives me, endurance charge generation while mapping. And endurance charge generation is, I think, a little bit underrated, especially since we are using Immortal Call, and Immortal Call is going to be pretty decent to mitigate burst damage when it's coming towards us. So yeah, endurance charges are pretty good. And just for a 1-noder, you're going to be having maximum endurances at all times, which is 3. And we path out through reflexes, which is nice because it gives us a bunch of suppression as well as flat evasion and some evasion. And of course, pathing over to the mandatory exceptional performance and more skill effect duration to make it so that we don't have to spam cast our BV all the time. And there's this one node here, which if you're struggling with the resistance, you can actually grab. And one thing that if you were to like respec something, you would probably respec these 3 life points. You would put it here or something like that. And you could even additionally get some resistances for an extra 3 points and a socket if you were to budget your points elsewhere. But that pretty much sums up the passive skill tree and the decisions that I made on that. But let's talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty and the numbers. Looking at Blade Vortex, we are 100% capped crit, and even if you take out some of our charms and things like that, we're still going to be at capped crit. However, what we are trying to scale here is the on-hit monster explosions. And you can see that I have 40% crit strike chance on this. And this is the reason why you want to go for Assassin over Occultist, because Occultist gets no base crit. We are getting 40%. However, we have actually not even activated is the enemy on full life. So if we say that the enemy is on full life, if we toggle it here, is the enemy on full life, boom, that puts us at 82% critical strike chance for our Explode chest, which for something that actually starts at 0 crit, that is insane. 82% chance. With additionally, we have a 4.5 meter radius as I previously shown. So that is going to be a crazy amount of radius for the Explode chest. So when a monster explodes, everything within that area is going to be affected. And then on top of that, it's going to be scaled by double damage that we have. The critical strike multiplier, which we have 593 global critical strike multiplier that applies to our Explode chest. And on top of that, we have a lot of penetration. So we have some penetration as well as a lot of percent increases and a lot of percent more damage. Yeah, you can see that we have 161% increased and 34% more, which is pretty damn good, all things considered, because our hatred is scaling 34% more, and we're getting a ton of extra, like Fizz extra, percent cold and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're getting a ton of extra damage to our Fizz Explode, and that makes me pretty happy, and that's the reason why we are dealing with maps so well on this character. And in general, I think like another option would be to explore going for a Blade Vortex Saboteur, as it has Born in the Shadows as well as 8% area of effect on all of these nodes. But I just decided that it was just better to go for the Assassin, as it gives you, crit immunity, a ton of critical strike chance and multi, as well as ambush and assassinate, which makes your Explode chest just completely crazy. That is basically the premise of this character and my decisions as to why I decided to make it this way. But just to quickly go over Occultist, it is not a bad ascendancy by any means. The ascendancy is pretty strong, but the reason why I don't like it is because of the conditional modifiers on this. So Void Beacon is pretty good, 20% less resistance for nearby enemies. And nearby, you guys know, is not good enough. So you're having to stand near things, meaning that your Explode is going to sort of proliferate outwards, and it's going to go out of this range, meaning, yeah, you're not going to be getting use out of Void Beacon, right? For your Explode specifically. Frigid Wake is pretty good though, but we're losing value because we of course want to be fully ailment immune. So cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen is basically useless if we want to have other immunities. You still have to go for shock immunity and ignite immunity, right? So that's kind of useless, but 15% more cold damage is pretty good, but that's basically all that is, right? And then we have Forbidden Power, which Forbidden Power is absolutely insane. It's completely broken, like, don't get me wrong. This is crazy notable. It gives me 0.3 meter radius, which is pretty damn good. But yeah, for 0.3 extra meter radius, which is going to be like less than 10% additional AoE, it's not worth it. It's just not. You're basically losing your entire ascendancy for this node. It's just not worth it. And the last one is going to be Profane Bloom, right? But Profane Bloom, we're not scaling like Chaos Explodes. We're not scaling any of that. So it's going to be so much less effective than your Explode chest, your Fizz Explode chest. Having this is just like cosmetic, basically. It sounds good, but yeah, that's about all it does. Like, if I was to actually play Blade Vortex on a Witch, I would play it on an Elementalist and just go for Heart of Destruction with Shaper of Storm, and potentially go for Bastion of Elements. As you can see, it gives you an insane amount of EHP, so it's kind of like buffer, right? It's going to be like, you get hit a few times, and since we have evasion cap, or as close to evasion cap as possible, as you can see, we have 94% chance. It's gonna have you like be up most of the time when you need it, and it's gonna be a nice buffer of extra EHP. So that's pretty good. And then I would just steal Forbidden Power. That's what I would do if I was playing on a Witch. But I'm not playing on a witch because I think assassin is actually unironically better because of this league and because of the fact that we get so much critical strike chance there. So yeah, just to talk about the defenses a little bit, I have 40,000 evasion with 94% evade chance. I can't get the last 1% for the life of me. I would have to grab like, how many of these nodes? Yeah, like all of these nodes to actually grab it, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. 94% chance to evade with capped suppression with 4.2k HP and endurance charges to feed our immortal call with a bunch of physical damage taken as. That is going to be our defenses pretty much, and the rest, Headhunter is going to have sort of you know, pick up the slack there. And it does a lot of work. Honestly, Headhunter is pretty good in terms of defenses, but in some situations where you've pressed a bunch of altars and you know, in cases you might have like lost momentum in your map, like you stop to loot stuff and you lose Headhunter buffs, yeah, you're in danger, especially since I didn't actually build Leech into this build, but you can build Leech, especially if you don't have Polymath. I think that's when you would go for an elemental cluster with Doriani's Lesson instead. And yeah, I mean, we actually end up getting to 82% effective hit pool and a decent enough Fizz max hit. And we have a high enough evasion to where we're just not dying, you know? And I ended up getting my character to level 100, doing just juiced maps. Of course, the XP is completely broken, this league, with all the wisps and stuff like that. That is all the nerdy stuff out of the way. And there's one last thing that I want to explain to you guys after I rebuy my Spectres because I killed them. Alright, so after this, we'll wrap it all up, but this is the last bit of technology that I wanted to show you guys that I put into this character, and that is going to be using Zealotry on Guardian's Blessing with Ray Spectres. And, you know, these get out of sync a little bit sometimes, but what you can do is you buy 2 dark marionettes. You don't have to buy perfect ones, but I buy perfect ones because the explosion scorches, and Scorch gives like a little bit of penetration, so that's some little bit of damage, but, you know, it's basically like nothing. But yeah, you want to put this on the ground. And what you're going to do is you're going to summon one of them, and then you're going to be pressing your Zealotry, right? So he's going to be starting to take damage. When he gets to about 50% HP, you want to summon the other one, and he's going to start taking damage. And what you're going to see is that the perfect marionette is just going to die and then respawn. And then it's going to keep doing that, right? Over and over again. So it's going to die and then respawn. And that's what these Spectres do. And that basically enables me to have Zealotry up a lot of the time without having to actually like babysit it that much. But of course in maps, when they take damage and that kind of stuff, they will get out of sync once in a while. So in those situations where they get out of sync, you know, you can always come back to your hideout and you just kill them like this, and then you can just repeat the process. But, you know, I kind of just treat this like we did in the past, like with our blessings and stuff. We just press them every so often. Whenever that goes down, I just press it again, or whenever I encounter a tanky monster. And it's just nice to have that extra aura, you know, from the dark marionettes. So that's a pretty insane tech, honestly, and something that I'll be using on most of my characters here for the rest of the league, right? So that about pretty much sums up the video. I hope you guys have found this showcase interesting, and at the very least maybe a bit useful if you're looking to reroll this character. Honestly, I didn't want to make this into a guide. It's so expensive. I know it's expensive, but if you're farming the league mechanic, you are rich this league. So maybe this is a character for you, or at the very least, I hope this video was sort of entertaining as a showcase of Path of Exile mechanics. And maybe if you're an aspiring build creator or something like that, you've learned a little bit from how I scale Explode and that kind of stuff. But of course, I'm not perfect. So if there are improvements or feedback or any sort of like, Tuna, you could have done this better, let me know in the comments. You guys are the best. I appreciate you so much. I will be gone for a week, you know, to go visit my mom. So I'll probably see you guys next week. I'll be back. You know, streams will continue, and you won't see this Christmas tree anymore as I'll be taking it down. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you have had a fantastic new year. I appreciate you all. And thank you so much for the support. That, you know, we had crazy support this league on the YouTube. You guys are the best. I appreciate you guys so much. And I owe everything to my community. So thanks, guys. Have a good one. Love you. Bye-bye.